Bonjour à tous.
Good afternoon, everyone. Is everyone okay? Comfortably seated? I'm going to be your MC today. My name is Cyrielle Ariel, and I'm going to be with you during this first Misk Talk France. So first of all, welcome to this interactive platform that brings together French and Saudi young people in an interactive manner in order to share different visions of the world and solutions, and through a change of paradigm. And I would like to thank our host, the Misk Foundation, initiated in 2011 by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who deserves your applause. His foundation is a global foundation. It's made by and for young people to encourage their development and to find new nuggets, and notably Saudi nuggets. Young people have something very specific. They have an open mind, solidarity, they're engaged, they want to innovate, they're a force for creation, for ambition and innovation. And the Misk Talk went around the world. Cairo, San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, Washington, and today in Paris. We have met a number of key players of change, Saudi, Albanian, from Madagascar, Lebanon, Malaya, the Emirates, Chinese, from many countries all over the world, who, thanks to you, with you, are going to show what their solutions are for tomorrow's world and today's world too. So before we begin to see how we can innovate to live in a better world, how many do you think there are entrepreneurs in the world? Don't be shy. 30 million entrepreneurs? Let's do this. Look at Christie's. 582 million. And the most entrepreneurial country in the world? It's in Africa. Not very far from Nigeria, unless I'm not good at geography. Uganda. The number of people under 30 in the world. No, it was Uganda, the country. Next question is the number of young people under the age of 30 globally. $3.8 billion young people. Global population is 7.6 billion, so you can see that. And the greatest challenge for our planet today? Absolutely. So it's very exciting today. We're going to have 9 young Saudi and French people, scientists, entrepreneurs, educators, and all players of change. I call them change makers, and they each have a project, an ambition, a perspective that can change our communities. But before we discover these nuggets, let's discover what the Misk Foundation does.
الحقيقية والقوة الحقيقية لتحقيق هذه الرؤية، وهي أهم ميزة بالنسبة لدى السعودية هي الطاقة الشبابية اللي فيها، والميزة الجيدة أنهم شباب واعي قوي لديه طموح رائع مثقف متعلم بشكل جيد مبدع لديه قيم عالية. باقي فقط نضع الرؤية ونعمل عليها.
Empowering young people leads to a stronger future. But how do we support young people so that they thrive in this rapidly changing world? How do we equip them with the knowledge and skills they need to create a modern, sustainable economy? Our foundation, Misk, was established by His Royal Highness, Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdul Aziz, in 2011 to discover, develop, and empower young people to overcome the challenges of today and contribute to the advancement of tomorrow. We focus on 4 areas. In education, we help young people move from learning to earning. In technology and science, we establish tech accelerators and incubators. In arts and culture, we showcase and promote the work of talented artists. In media, we support the creation of innovative content and inspire our audiences. We know that these opportunities have no boundaries and cannot be achieved alone. So, we collaborate with the world's leading organizations, universities, corporations, NGOs, and governments to provide new horizons for young people to thrive. In our first 6 years, through 100 events, programs, and initiatives, we have served over 1 million young people from more than 65 countries. This is just the start. We want you to join us on our journey as we work to invest in our greatest and most valuable asset, our young people.
On peut applaudir.
Round of applause is very much in order. So let's now listen to our first speaker, Abdul Rahman. I hope I'm pronouncing his name okay. Who's a young linguist specialized in legal translation. He's going to tell us about the magical power of words. Are you ready to travel and discover new horizons with him? Yes? Great. Ladies and gentlemen, Salam alaikum. My name is Abdul Rahman. I'm Saudi, and I'm a jury translatologist. Jury traductologue. What exactly is that? Don't you worry, I'll tell you. When I was a child in Saudi Arabia, I knew nothing about France. I knew no French. The only French I really knew and loved was this gentleman, the legend Zidane. This man changed my life. It's thanks to him that I learned French. And it's thanks to him that I became a legal translator and a jury translatologist. This is 2018. We're always wondering what the point it is to have a human translator when there are so many smart machines, such as Google Translate, who can do everything. It's fantastic. It makes life easy. It always finds solutions. But the real question is, can Google Translate translate complex sentences in French? Have a look at this example. The weather is nice. Do you agree? Google Translate does it perfectly into Arabic. Close your eyes for a minute and repeat in your mind, il fait beau, il fait beau, il fait beau. What do you see? The French who are in this room, I'm sure that what you see is an image such as this one. The sunshine. You love the sunshine, don't you? Do you know what there is in a Saudi's mind for fair weather? Rain. And that is precisely the difficulty of translation, because it is not simply switching between words and sentences. It's a cultural passage between individuals, companies, societies, and cultures. I can't have a discussion with a Frenchman and say, the weather's fine in Saudi Arabia. I have to explain that fine weather in Saudi Arabia is rain. When I talk to my mother, I say, the weather's fine in Paris. She'll think it's raining, although it's a sunny day. And Humboldt says so. He says, man thinks, feels, and lives only in language. Because language is not only a means of expression. Language is a means of discovering the world. You must always think in a given culture. You must always feel in that culture. You must always live in that culture. Why so? Because learning a language is learning a culture. In France, when you hear good news, sometimes you say, we're touched, it warms the heart. It's heartwarming. Why do we say heartwarming? Because it's always cold in France. And we need warmth. In Saudi Arabia, It's the exact opposite. We say it cools our heart. You see, that is the cultural difference that exists between French and Arabic, and France and Saudi Arabia. The first time I visited France was in 2008. I had no language problems. I spoke a little French. I could understand a little. But what I found most difficult was understanding the expressions that come from French culture. One day, a friend of mine said, "Abdul, you're singing in yogurt." I said, "What?" For a Saudi, singing in yogurt has no meaning. But it's a French expression. To sing in yogurt means you're singing badly in fake English. So I said, "Oh, right, I get it." And other expressions such as chercher midi à 14 heures, trying to find noon at 2 p.m. What does that mean? It means trying to make simple things more complicated than they really are. And there's a word in France that I really like, which is parapluie, umbrella. It's used in France to protect yourself from the rain, while in Saudi Arabia, is something that you use to protect yourself from the sun. And it's not a parapluie, it's a parasoleil. So most of my Saudi friends who visit France or live in France and don't speak French have only heard of the Arc de Triomphe or the Champs-Élysées or the superb Opera Garnier and, of course, the Eiffel Tower. They don't speak French. They can't go any further than that to discover Paris a little more. They can't go to Bercy Village. They can't go to La Bastille district. Why? Because to them, language is a barrier. For myself, personally, it is through language that I discovered Paris, that I discovered the French regions, the French provinces, that I discovered French culture, and Francophonie, the French-speaking community. I am one of 274 million people on Earth, all over the world, who speak French. And when we talk about Francophonie, there's a word I love, but it's an expensive French word, the word shopping. In Canada, they say magasiner, which is the French translation of it. So for a Frenchman who goes to Quebec, who says shopping, he's supposed to say magasiner. But I am truly delighted and proud of Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia encourages young people to travel, to study abroad, to discover the world, to discover other cultures, and to bring all of that back to Saudi Arabia. Why so? To develop the kingdom, to improve the kingdom, and to clarify the image of Saudi Arabia abroad. I would like to finish with this fine quote by Edmund Carey, who says, "The same page in French will not be translated the same way into English or Bantu. The distance that exists between two cultures leaves an unavoidable imprint on the manner things are translated, much more than purely linguistic relationships." I would like to thank you all very much for your attention, and don't forget, today is a fine day outside. Thank you very much, Abdul Rahman. I won't think of the weather in the same way now, and, I'm a blonde, so to me an umbrella's an umbrella. So now let's listen to our second speaker, young writer, who is very active and who likes to create new worlds. How does she do that? She explores questions and injects poetry into our day-to-day life. I'd like you to give a very warm welcome to Dahlia Baishen.
and I'm going to tell you my story. So it all started with a picture that was introduced to me in a literature class in Saudi Arabia. I was 15 years old then. The painting was by a Frenchman, and it was introduced to me by my American teacher from New York City. Her name was Dr. Alva Young. His name was Degas. And this is the picture. Sorry. So Dr. Young told us to examine the picture, observe it carefully, and make up a story about it. Yeah, this was our homework. We actually had to write a 5-page story about this picture here. And we had to choose any Degas painting we wanted. Now, I considered this more like fun rather than homework. I mean, wouldn't you guys agree? So I was drawn to this picture because it was different than the other pictures. And so I wrote my story. But instead of writing 5 pages, I gave in 20. And every time she would give us an exercise, she reminded me, Dalia, it's 5 pages. Years later, I ended up living in San Francisco, one of the most creative cities ever. And I was lucky enough to study what I love the most, which is creative writing. And oddly enough, my English teacher there, his name was Dr. Young. Only this time, he was a man and from Mississippi. And I never forget a remark he told me once. One day he said, Dalia, you write about Middle Easterns in English, your expressions are American, your punctuation British, and sometimes you think in French. So this remark kind of stayed with me because I started thinking about it. And to me, this is an idea of a global citizen. I was born in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. I lived in France, and I lived in the United States. I consider myself to be a global writer, a portable writer, one that moves around and travels and is fortunate enough to see the world. You see, your parents can teach you about you. I'm sure your spouse can teach you about you, or even your good friend. If you have children, your children can teach you about you. But for me personally, I learned a lot about myself through writing, through the depth of writing. It's introspective, it's imaginative, it's like having new lens, and it sharpens your perspective. So I've been working on a novel for a while now. It's a book of magic realism, and I imagine the world I created with a new architecture, new elements, and the characters have become my friends, really. So the world I created took around a year and a half to construct and write. So patience is truly your friend as a writer, and is truly a virtue. The story started off as poems, and from poems it turned to short stories, and from short stories to an upcoming novel. This was my creative process, and it's been such a pleasure. I've been always called a daydreamer. Dalia the daydreamer, they used to say. And one of my teachers used to say, daydream, daydream, it's good for you. As a writer, that's my homework every day. That's what I do. And I'm lucky to imagine every day. And my question is, do you? We're all hardwired for storytelling. And the ancient Egyptians even started off with it. from calligraphy and its beauty and its expression. The truth is, we need stories. We need stories to learn from those before us and to preserve for those after us. They're recipes for humanity. It's about being human. And a writer once said, "Nous écrivons pour goûter la vie deux fois," which means we write to taste life twice. And that's true for most writers. We relish in the depth and intricacies of our own world. This is still my beginning and the beginning of my journey. And I'm excited, I really am. I'm excited to write new characters, to flesh out new stories, to explore more topics. And I invite you all today to take charge of your pen or your laptops and to start writing and recording. We're all storytellers, and everyone in this room has a story to say, and everyone will tell it differently. So let's hear your voices, and let's start living twice. Thank you.
جاية أتكلم عن تجربتي الخاصة جدا مع MIT وكيف إن إحنا نقدر نستخدم التقنية الجديدة أو أحدث التقنية في مجال الارتفيشال انتليجنس أو اللي هي الذكاء الاصطناعي في تطوير نظام الصحة عندنا بحيث إن إحنا نبني مجتمع يكون صحي وقادر على إنه يلبي احتياجات الطب.
طلعت فوق المنصة كنت شوي حسيت في خوف لكن تفاعل الجمهور خلاني أحس إني أنا من بين أصحاب.
And continue enhancing this beautiful world you are already building. Let us follow up and continue building this creative economy and doing things that have never been done on this planet. From Riyadh to Jeddah, and yes, to Neom.
أشارك تجربتي مع العالم وأشارك تجربتي مع المجتمع السعودي بأن حنا قادرين في شتى المجالات أننا ننافس ونبرز طاقاتنا وجهودنا.
When I look at Saudi Arabia, I see potential. Potential for a country with over half its population under the age of 25. Potential for the youth who are looking to grow, learn, and change the world.
A result of a passion of one man. Mohammed bin Salman. His passion has transformed Saudi Arabia. A man of my age, I never thought it would happen in my lifetime. He's a passionate man. And if that man can change a country, imagine what your own passion can make for you. Thank you so much.
Vous pouvez applaudir. Moi, je trouve que ça donne envie de...
A round of applause. It really makes you want to travel, doesn't it? Makes you feel that the young people are committed to change mentalities and mindsets with a vision of something sustainable over the long term for a better future. The third speaker is Abdul Aziz, a doctor. He traveled in many countries. He lived on 3 continents. And he drew inspiration to develop projects in this country, in Saudi Arabia, from his town, Jazal. Please welcome him.
Merci. Bonjour tout le monde.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abdul Aziz. I'm a doctor, a virologist at the University Hospital Center of Rouen. I'm now a lecturer in Saudi Arabia, and I would like to show you where my town is in Saudi Arabia. It's to the south of Saudi Arabia, close to the border with Yemen, and close to the Red Sea. It's wonderful for us. The first point for a virologist, what is it? He's a doctor who carries out research on relationships between viruses and sickness. The reason why I chose this profession, virology, here's the answer. I chose virology for two reasons. First of all, my town, my own town in Saudi Arabia, was hard hit by a virus known as the Rift Valley fever, Rift Valley virus. It was really wicked, which that's why, because it left at least 500 people infected, and at least 20% died because of that virus. Personally, therefore, I helped people who were bleeding everywhere, people who were suffering every day, all night long. And unfortunately, when I crossed someone, they didn't know what it was. What's this sickness? What's this virus? At the time, unfortunately, we didn't have enough physicians or virologists, even though laboratories were not well prepared to treat or diagnose a virus such as this. But luckily, we had a doctor, Dr. Mohammed Al-Membi. This gentleman, thank you. This gentleman was able to detect this virus. He's associated clinical and biological data. Plus, he tracked the virus down when it started in Africa and then Yemen, and it ended up in Saudi Arabia. That gentleman contacted several physicians in Australia and the United States, in France and Germany, to see what virus this was. This gentleman, he then proposed the right treatment and the right preventive method for people who are infected and their loved ones. That gentleman, he also proposed another preventive method for animals. When you're dealing with a transmissible disease between humans and animals. So this gentleman did a fine job. And his job was highly appreciated at national and international level. At national level, he won a very prestigious award in Saudi Arabia, the first class award from King Abdul Aziz, and he is renowned around the world. This was 3 years after the epidemic outbreak. So that gentleman, he was able to put a stop to that outbreak. It ended there, but for me it was a beginning. It was a new start, a new decision for me, a decision to study medicine like that doctor, to combat viruses and to help those who were infected by infectious agents. I therefore did my medical studies in Saudi Arabia, and towards the last year, there was another epidemic outbreak. It was less visible than the first outbreak in 2000. This outbreak was type 1 diabetes. I know that some of you have already started to think differently of type 2 diabetes, but for physicians, they're totally different. Type 1 diabetes, it just shares the name and the clinical manifestations with type 2. But apart from that, they're very different. Type 1 diabetes, at a molecular level and etiologically, is very different from type 2 diabetes. So this disease affects children primarily. Personally, when I see a child suffering, I suffer because they have a right to a normal life like anyone else. Children suffering from type 1 diabetes are forced to take drugs every day. Otherwise, they will die. And therefore, towards the last year, I contacted a scientist in the US who was very much known for his research on relations between chronic diseases and the virus. His work was very widespread, and in 1990 he was the first to establish the links between the virus and chronic cardiac disorders. So went to the US to look for a Saudi working in an American laboratory, but we weren't the only team because we were working in parallel with several international teams. And all of this to fight against type 1 diabetes. We did a fine job. We showed that there was a relationship between the virus and type 1 diabetes, but the mechanism for this infection was quite new. It was the first time that we showed how that virus worked in the pancreatic tissues. Our work studies were confirmed by another French team from Lille. We made fine progress. We proposed something else, a new model for a vaccine. It could be very useful. It could be very practical for children. Why? Because it will prevent, or at least prevent, type 1 diabetes in children, so that children can have a better life. Children who are affected by type 1 diabetes. So we're a large international team with an association known as Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, JDRF. For us, there's another team that has started to do serious work on vaccination. And the first findings will be published in a few months in 2018. But you may ask, why? In Finland? Because in Finland, they're the most affected by type 1 diabetes. But ladies and gentlemen, look at the fourth on this table here, Saudi Arabia. Yes, we're not very far. So for me, we must find a plan for vaccination against type 1 diabetes so that we can offer a better life to our children. And then I arrived in France, and I had the honor of continuing to study here at the Rouen Hospital Center. The advantage here in France is that you can combine research, which I did in the United States, with clinical data here. And I completed my research, and I presented it at several congresses. One congress was some months ago in Bahrain. Luckily, I won the award for the best oral communication. But that's not the good news in actual fact. Thank you so much, but that's not the good news. The good news is, do you know who gave me the award for the best oral communication? Dr. Mohammed El-Hazmi. It was he who stopped the epidemic outbreak in Gaza. He is the one who put a stop to that virus with the Rift Valley fever. I was delighted, and I was so proud. And it put a lot of responsibility on my shoulders to continue my research and my studies. Lastly, I believe that we must found a university hospital center with a very modern laboratory in Saudi Arabia and Gaza. Why? Because we have millions and millions of Muslims coming to see us each year and every year for their religious practices. So it's better for them and for us so that we can be protected against all infectious agents. And with the University Hospital Center, with a very modern laboratory, we can diagnose and treat all infectious agents. Thank you. Secondly, the second goal. This is something that's quite clear in France. How to combine clinical data with the research. That will give very rich findings, sturdy findings of the utmost quality. And thirdly, we must apply the last national and international recommendation when it comes to prevention. Because we're physicians, we know that prevention is always better than treatment. I thank you, and I wish you a wonderful day.
Aziz.
Thank you so much, and we wish you find success. We will need your solutions and your research. And now for the fourth presentation is a lady who uses new technology to change paradigms and define solutions for the education of children. So please welcome Gaël Regnault.
Mesdames, Messieurs, bonsoir. Je suis Gaëlle.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Gaël Regnault, and I'm going to be telling you about neurosciences, technology, and school, and also what you're all holding in your hand, a touchscreen tool that can be extremely useful for yourself, for your children, and for society. The fact is that my relationship with education remained very simple. For about 30 years, I went to school. Things were easy. I passed diplomas. I got an interesting job, and imagined that school was something that everyone thought was simple. And then I became a mother. I had 2 boys, other children, and the second child, who is 13 today, did not develop like other children did. He developed like any other baby until the age of 20 months and then stopped speaking and was not accepted by school. He is a boy who, despite his ability to sit down at school, did not understand and learn like others. So I thought, what can one do when one has a differently minded child for him to find his place in society, and even more so when I'm no longer here? The system normalizes, allows children to learn when they have the ability to speak, to count, to say. How can school welcome a child who does not seem to understand like others, who is extraordinary in a sense? How can every child on this planet benefit from personalized education that can bring him to his maximum potential? Because every child has the same value, I'm sure you'll agree. And then the school day is very restrictive. So there you are with a child who is unable to transmit everything. You are unable to transmit everything. You need to teach them autonomy, culture, teach them to write, or international things, for them to have a global outview, so that they can sit at table and taste different foodstuffs. This question, which is the question for ordinary children, is a question that deserves to be asked of every child. What are we trying to convey through our educational strategies? Which elements of culture, but also on the basis of scientific literature, which elements must we prioritize to give maximum chances to children of which we have responsibility as educators or parents? And that's where technology comes in. Technology makes it possible to spread through the internet content, but it also can capture very precious information. Every time you touch one of these screens, you can send a piece of data that says, I have understood or I have not understood. And even when a child cannot speak, even when they are very much disabled, this is my son here who has 8 areas of his brain that are not fueled with oxygen, they can show that they know how to count, that they can add, and that therefore they may be able to obtain a job and have a place in society and not simply be a burden, and an unhappy one at that. So I would like to tell you how these tools can be used for leisure, but they can also be used as a major lever, a major driver education, and to help us to adjust how we bring education to each and every one of these children. So, of course, this part of my personal story was not just an opportunity for me to philosophize. I transformed this social calling into a social corporation with state-of-the-art technologies because I worked for 20 years and had built an interesting skill set, which I dedicated to my child, to hundreds of thousands of children, and for French society, which is the society in which I live. And I work hand in hand with the government because its education is an issue for parents, but also for the state. What I did was to take a number of teachers, educators, psychiatrists, and ask them to decompose the school curriculum into a number of tiny steps. If you have math, if you have language, all of that is described in manuals with exercises and something that can be materialized as a kind of staircase, the staircase of knowledge. But the steps of the staircase are too high for these children with different abilities. So by adding small intermediary steps, by cutting down skill sets into very small, reachable steps, by offering them on a touch screen, user-friendly instrument for children for whom, for instance, holding a pen is too complicated because they have muscular dystrophy or whatever, to use only a touch screen and to offer a very fine grain and very gradual and very gentle path of learning. That allows these children to learn. And today, a number of scientific protocols based on these tools have demonstrated this. And that is how, with one touch, you can collect a piece of data and save it. You can teach, and you can also evaluate. What I would like you to remember from my brief presentation today is that people talk about social tech, ed tech, e-health. At the convergence of all of this, you have educational systems based on digital with built-in evaluation systems. One can think that artificial intelligence is a very scary thing. When you have a lot of education and evaluation data, that you bring it all together, algorithms make it possible to offer a child in the classroom the best tailored type of education that they need. Of course, their parents, their teachers will continue to choose between two exercises. There will be a human decision. But this human decision is supported by an automated system that can work with millions or billions of pieces of data to offer the best opportunity to children. And then, of course, they're only kids, and if they're disabled, we shouldn't be annoying them too much. What we decided was that all of these ed tech, all of these apps must remain made for children. It was shown by an American scientist called Mrs. Diamond that the most important thing to succeed in school is not your IQ, it's not how good you are at maths, it's what is known as executive functions. Executive functions is the ability of the human brain to select a strategy and to take the best decision based on the context. It's the ability to have conjoined attention over a long period of time. If you're very smart, but if you're unable to focus on an objective, there's no point. So this inhibition, these attention capacities, and many others too, such as the working memory, are major elements of success at school. So in our games, I want these kids, again, to reach the best of their possibilities. We've created a number of exercises to allow them to work with these executive functions. And that is how these kids, like anyone else who uses our tools, can develop great intercultural flexibility in real-life situations, in mobilizing their skills, however great or small, in context. And that is the true intelligence that we as parents, we as educators, but also we as governments must build for tomorrow. And all this is greatly facilitated by technology. And then, of course, it's hugely important to remember that motivation and the pleasure of learning are crucial, and that technology does not replace individuals, which is why I would like to insist on this. A mother does not leave her phone, or a dad, gentlemen, terribly sorry. The important thing is that these electronic instruments serve as mediators between parents and educators and children, because they give great opportunities to educate, which is why I would like to end with the importance of encouraging access to education, access to school for all, within school, or in specialized establishments, or in the homes of these children, but with digital uses that are truly well thought out, with carefully selected content and responsible content. Of course, all of this exists in the French language, but as the audience says today, it's very important to think in multiple languages, and I hope that one day these tools will exist in Arabic. Thank you. Thank you very much. I can see our speakers. There's a lot of stress. There are great testimonials. I think they do deserve a round of applause, because it's difficult to stand here in the spotlight. It's a little bit tough. So who in this room is an entrepreneur? Raise your hand, please. Who wants to become an entrepreneur? In any case, our next speaker is an entrepreneur who shuttles between Paris and Jeddah, and he has plenty of stuff to tell us about what he does and about the new startup nation. If I'd like you to give a very warm welcome to Hussein Attar.
I'll talk to you about the largest startup in the world, a country startup, Saudi Arabia, and how it inspired me to become an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur in Saudi Arabia. Similar characteristics to many tech startups, Saudi Arabia is disruptive. It has changed what it was known about, and it is adapting to all the changes it's facing. Also, it is persistent and focused on the goals that it wants to achieve, and is hiring the best talent and giving them a culture for them to innovate and create and find products that fit the citizens that they are serving. And they are led by a visionary, passionate person who is taking the country forward. A country, this is the result that creates institutes that are changing and pushing the boundaries of what's known, and is transforming the nation itself into a digital e-government. Imagine yourself here in France going to the prefecture and not having to fill any papers or forms. This is the future that we're seeing now in Saudi Arabia. And we are creating mini hubs that are fostering innovation. Neom, Cake, and other similar examples that are places where people can innovate and things are getting invested in. A government is nothing without its citizens. A kingdom of youth. More than 50% of the population is less than the age of 25. And we are appaholics. We love to use apps for everything. And we are also social active. We are the top users in Twitter, in YouTube. We love to express, we love to communicate, we love to share. And the startup country that we have has inspired its citizens and institutes to follow suit. Many events were created that help bring together bright-minded people to collaborate, to work, to pitch. And that's where my journey began. I had ideas, and I had the know-how after studying abroad. But I did not have an outlet, a place where I can share my ideas, meet similar mind-like people. So I decided to go to an event called Startup Week in Jeddah. I found a team. We hacked the demo. We went on stage, pitched to audiences and judges. although we lost, but the inspiration that we got from the audience and judges gave us the inspiration to move forward and take this to the next level. So we did. We looked what were the options out there. We found an accelerator. An accelerator is an institute that takes an idea from an idea phase into a company. And we took that risk. We met with Plastics Labs that gave us funding, offices, mentorship, networking, and many other benefits. And Sawulli was created. In case you don't speak Arabic, Sawulli means take a photo for me. And it is the leading platform for booking photographers in the Arab region. If you have an event, wedding, product, or any type of photography or videography anywhere in the kingdom, you just go on the app, you put that details, you get instant proposals from photographers with their profile, experience, and previous work. We helped bring job opportunities to more than 3,500 male and female photographers from all cities in Saudi Arabia. And we're expanding beyond that. After graduating from the accelerator, it was time to find an office. Co-working spaces and incubators are key elements in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. They help bring communities to inspire one another and motivate each other to take this forward. Actually, in the beginning of my journey, I noticed a lack of these co-working spaces. So I saw an opportunity. I found a partner, I told them, let's take it ahead, and we created Maktabi service offices. And this is kind of my part of giving back and trying to build the ecosystem for the entrepreneurs. No ecosystem is done without the money. Investment is important for startups to grow and to expand. There are many venture capitalists and angel investors willing to spend into tech startups and take this forward. I'm not saying it's easy, but pitching, meeting, networking, you will find the right person like we did. We found a passionate person who believes in Sawulli and its potential. We won many awards and recognitions from different institutes. Sawulli is one of the top 50 Arab startups in the Arab regions. And I believe that a part of entrepreneur's person has to give back to the community and help and inspire other entrepreneurs. I'm not the only one. There are startups being created in Saudi Arabia every day, from ordering food to delivery to maintenance. Even in the hardware space, we are creating products and exporting it abroad. Innovative ideas are being created in Saudi Arabia every day. And Saudi Arabia is hungry for innovation. It is collaborating with lots of countries and institutes. And part of it is collaborating with the creative French people. And there are lots of untapped opportunities in Saudi Arabia. The customers are appaholics. They want to use apps. They want to be tech. You have a government that's there to support you, give you the licensing and funding that you need to expand in Saudi Arabia. And also, if you want, you can also partner up with tech-savvy entrepreneurs, similar like me. There are many others that are willing to help expand your startup in Saudi Arabia. In the previous years, there have been many institutes being created in an exponential growth. I'm not saying we're perfect, but we're striving and improving and adapting. The market size has been increasing and is forecasted to increase even more. Investors from all sides are coming to invest more in Saudi Arabia. In conclusion, I want to give you a different side of Saudi Arabia. The oil, desert, camel cliches, that's not what I'm talking about. It's the other side, the tech scene, the booming tech scene that's moving digital and fast. There are many opportunities that are happening in Saudi Arabia, and if you're interested, you should speak to a Saudi today to see how your company or your institute can expand in the kingdom. And you will have the government support, whatever you need to get in the country and start working right away. And to all the entrepreneurs here and abroad, create, innovate, and inspire. Thank you.
world a better place for everyone.
يطمح لها الشباب السعودي.
Don't ever let somebody else tell you what you can't do. But this is the very first time that I've ever been invited to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
This is a very important topic. Getting youth to show us the future, to help them to feel empowered, that's critical.
Is we're really trying to identify where these gaps are and trying to give the opportunity for the young people to learn or get training or get some form of education on it.
Je veux adresser mon plein soutien et celui de la France au prince héritier pour cette initiative de créer en Arabie Saoudite le Misk Global Forum. Vous relevez le défi d'organiser ici le Davos des jeunes et c'est une formidable source de confiance en l'avenir que vous nous offrez ainsi.
But what if we have a world where every student can learn at their own pace? Every student can master concepts before moving on. And what if it was a world where all of that was freely accessible if you just had access to a low-cost smartphone or some type of a device?
I'm excited about this initiative because I love challenging young people to solve very tough problems and to pursue their dreams.
Youth is a beautiful thing. Be young, enjoy yourself, but know this. While you are off being young and enjoying yourself, the people that you are ultimately going to be competing with, they are someplace grinding. They're studying, they're practicing, they're researching, they're rehearsing, they're networking, and that's going to make the difference between who signs the front of the check and who signs the back of the check.
When you open things up for the young people, they get very creative and start to dream, and I'm very optimistic about what's possible here.
With Misk, we're all about, developing, empowering, and equipping young people for the knowledge economy. And on a global level, essentially the Misk Global Forum is the global arm of the Misk Foundation.
We have the power to find what we need beyond the old educational paradigm. Schools need to recognize the power of these new possibilities and find ways of using technology to improve the educational experience for all.
Saudi Arabia is opening up its market for innovative young entrepreneurs from all over the globe.
هل نحن جاهزون لتوظيف مكاسب الثورات العلمية والصناعية التي يشهدها العالم؟ كيف سنتكيف مع الثورة الصناعية الرابعة التي تضرب بكثير من الصناعات التقليدية؟
In a knowledge economy, human capital, certain forms of human capital becomes especially important in the interaction with machines, machines that have been infused with new technology.
I'm really excited about what the Misk Foundation is doing and really empowering young people.
What did I do today to make tomorrow possible?
الطاقة الحقيقية والقوة الحقيقية لتحقيق هذه الرؤية، وهي أهم ميزة بالنسبة لدى السعودية هي الطاقة الشبابية اللي فيها، والميزة الجيدة أنهم شباب واعي قوي لديه طموح رائع مثقف متعلم بشكل جيد مبدع لديه قيم عالية. باقي فقط أن نضع الرؤية ونعمل عليها. الشباب بلا شك هم أهم روافد هذه الرؤية وتحقيقها.
Vous avez bien noté dans vos agendas?
Did you make a note of the next dates? Come on, is there anyone in this room? Speakers are here, you need to support them. So we want to change the world. Everyone does. And I think our next speaker is actually changing the future of immunology. Please wake up and give a very warm welcome to Maisa.
Why do people get sick? And how can we eradicate all disease? Is there a vaccine we could use to prevent us from getting sick, to protect our immune system? Is that an unrealistic question? My answer is no. I think we could. My name is Maysa Abdu. I am a Saudi immunology researcher here in Paris with team immunology of viral infection and autoimmune disease at Kremlin-Bicêtre hospitals in Paris. And I am about to get my PhD. During 6 years of testing, trials, error, I may have found the answer to a question we have been asking ourselves since the dawn of age. Why do people get sick? I discovered with my team the new insight into CD8 memory generation. This finding may have implication for a vaccine and immunotherapy design that could eradicate 1,000 of disease. As I am about to publish my finding in a prestigious review in a few weeks ago, like a first author. But how it all started, I will tell you. A couple of years ago, few months before I started university, one of the closest people to my heart was diagnosed with cancer. From this day on, my life was never the same before. It affected me deeply and had a profound resonance in two further aspects of my life: my characters and my career path. From then, I found my calling, finding if there was a science to get rid of lymphoma especially, and disease in general. I would always ask myself, why do people get sick? That might seem a bit idealistic, right? The path to discovery, like scientific discovery itself, trial, error, repeat, but you must persist, persist, persist. After graduating with bachelor degree in microbiology with first honor from King Abdul Aziz University, I worked in the hospitals for 10 months. I then succeeded in receiving a scholarship from the Ministry of Higher Education to pursue a master's degree in immunology in France. I arrived in France 9 years ago, not capable of speaking a single word of French. So I spent 8 months in a tour to learn the French language to be able to continue my study here. After successfully getting my certificate in level B2 in French, I applied for a master's degree in infectiology, which include microbiology, immunology, virology at the University Paris Diderot, Paris 7. Normally, after bachelor degree, I must apply for master 2, but I had to retake the master 1 because I changed my specialty. I want to focus my study on immunology. But I got rejected by letter. I was told that I lacked the basic requirement knowledge in the field of immunology and virology. So they say no. I had to find another way. So I went to the Saudi Cultural Office to help me. But no remained the answer. I had to find another way. I requested a meeting with the person in charge of the master program I so much wanted. I have been presented in a jury composed of 7 professors. They asked me, why are you back? Because they had rejected me as. What I can't tell you is that I felt like the time had stopped, but I was confident of myself. I explained that I could be able, proving myself and working hard. I took the necessary step to find acceptation. I developed my argument, my passion to get the necessary step to support me to achieve my goal. After careful consideration, they decided to give me another chance. But I failed my first year. In spite of working as hard as I could, for a month I felt broken, disoriented, desperate. But I had my request, I had my patience, and had to find an answer. Why do people get sick? So I decided to retake my year. I completed my master's degree, and during my research life, I started working on one of my initial goals, cancer and HIV immunology research. And I published with my team in a prestigious review in the Nature Communication. Then I decided to pursue a PhD. However, my request to extend my scholarship in France was rejected by the Ministry of Higher Education many times, which thought I had spent enough time in France. I think a lot of people do not understand what I do and what drives me. So I went to Riyadh to try to find a solution. As I was waiting outside the minister's office to try to get an extension for my scholarship, a lady was getting into the minister's office because she had a big problem. And she left the door slightly open. I followed her into the minister's office, and I got my extension for my scholarship. In the past 6 years, between work during weekend and endless painful night in the lab, I spent it with a lot of mice. Hopeless for results, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for many months, and sometimes nothing. I fought to achieve my goal, but armed with determination, I was supported by my country, the French education system, and a great network of friends and my incredible family. I tested my hypothesis on mice, and now I am ready to take my research into the next step and hopefully find the vaccine against all disease and eradicate 1,000 of disease. We still have a couple of years to go to further research, test, and make sure it works for humans. But we are one step closer. At the end, sometimes it's a matter of pushing the door and showing your commitment to a bigger purpose. Dare if you care. Thank you very much.
Merci, Maïssa. Alors, j'ai une petite question.
Thank you. I have a little question for you. Are you passionate for robotics? I'm sure. Well, that is our next speaker, who's going to tell us about the future and tell us how to live with smart machines. Here is our next speaker, Ziad Zamzami.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zaid Zamzami. I would like to speak to you about how robotics impacted my life and why it's important for you. When I was a kid, they said that you had Islamic civilizations that were at the heart of the scientific culture of the world. That has moved westwardly when the Europeans translated the knowledge that we had developed. I realize that's my plan. I will study their language. I will go to study in France, in Europe, and I will come back with all the things I've learned. 10 years later on, with hard work, I came to France to do my studies. I was always a lover of French culture. Its great scientists, Henri Poincaré, Blaise Pascal, Descartes, and Marie Curie. I was lucky to work at Pierre and Marie Curie University and also at the University of Sorbonne. A few figures. It's one of the first universities in the world. founded in the 13th century. It still is amongst the top universities in the world because it's number 3 in maths. Thanks to the field medals, the equivalent of the Nobel Prize in mathematics, and a great researcher like Frédéric Vallée. I also loved robotics, like many of you, but I decided to make it my job. I didn't have a clue about robotics and what it meant for our day-to-day lives and its potential usages. So that was well before we heard about it in the media, when I was 14, before Facebook and Twitter. Today we hear a lot of talk about robotics and robots who will steal our jobs, win over the world. What do you think? Do you think that's the case? Yeah, that's true. A typical day of work, I run all the time to try to prevent the robot from leaving the laboratory to conquer the world. It hurts my back. Science fiction. That's one thing, but robots are developed to help people in repetitive, difficult, or dangerous tasks. There are more and more applications impacting our day-to-day lives. Image detection, driverless cars, detecting diseases, many applications that are now being explored. During my studies, I was lucky enough to work on several interesting robotic products, especially in extreme environments. What do I mean by that? Let me tell you the story, and you'll see that you're familiar with this. In 2011, there was the Fukushima disaster after a tsunami that damaged the nuclear plant in Japan, and the entire area was contaminated with radioactive elements. But we had to send someone, though, to inspect the reactors and to try to prevent any further explosions. So this was an environment where you couldn't send people or animals. It was lethal for all living beings. That's where robots can act as heroes. The Japanese government made a plea, called on different laboratories and companies to say, send us your best robots.
Donc, il y avait des robots japonais.
The Japanese, American robots. Unfortunately, despite the state of the art of robot technology, they all failed, and the reactor exploded. The main reason for that failure is that all these robots are primarily remote controlled by an operator, wearing a suit and a mask, manipulating the robot, going up stairs without the robot falling over. That's not easy. Everyone became worried. France, as well, is largely dependent on nuclear energy, with nearly 90% of energy production in nuclear power. So France needed to prepare and develop the right solution. And this is where this project started, together with the DGA, the technological army of the French army, and also with the Commissariat for Atomic Energy, CEA, in France. The plan was ambitious: to develop a robot with the ability to cross obstacles independently. In other words, the operator, all he had to do was to say, go up the stairs, go from point A to point B, and the robot needed to do it on its own without falling over. Another interesting project was with FAST. In this case, it's like a driverless robot, like with Uber and Tesla. But here it was an all-terrain, like in Saudi Arabia. You know, it's not easy to go over hills and not turn over. So it was a real challenge and a very interesting project. All of this to show you examples, just to set the backdrop, but also to say that the world has seen rapid change because of the fourth industrial revolution. We're entering a period of major technological shifts. This is an opportunity for Saudi Arabia to take the lead and to play a key role because they already have what it takes to succeed. Today, there's not a country or company that has a monopoly. Saudi Arabia, well, it's not fortunate with its oil, but with its young talents. 90% of the population. All we need to do is to give them the means through training all the way up to innovation. It also calls for key partners that will guide and help in this transformation, and also a commitment by the state to carry out this nationwide project that is fully backed. Luckily, the Crown Prince came with his courage and ambition. A great dream, vision, and project, and to ensure key partnerships, acquiring the best companies in robotics, Boston Dynamics in the US, and even Abdul Rahman, which was a French leader. Saudi Arabia dreams of becoming a leader in the fourth industrial revolution, and not just a consumer of technology. I'm already hear some of you saying it's impossible, but I have a message for you, and I believe that the Prince also shares this vision with me. With a great vision, there will always be obstacles. With a great dream, there will be the skeptics, but with hard work, there can be no limit. Thank you.
Bravo. Alors maintenant.
And now let's welcome our youngest speaker. She's 18 years old, and she's been an entrepreneur for 3 years now. She's given lots of speeches like these in major international forums. Here is Philippine Dolbo.
Bonjour à tous, merci beaucoup.
Hi everyone, and thank you. I'm a Philippine, 18 years old. It's an honor for me to speak at this conference. Since I was 15, I've been heading a company called New School, working in digital education. And I have a special story to talk to you about this evening. I'm 18 years old now. Since 3 years now, I've had to face stereotypes. Yes, you can be a woman, young, and be an entrepreneur. And this is what I will tell you more about. I have a special past with lots of ups and downs. I also had wonderful encounters. I was very daring, and that allowed me to take part in many events and to arrive here at the Georges V, at the Misk Talk. It all started the 6th of October 2014. At the start of high school, I had innovative classes in economics where I needed to set up a fictitious mini company. But I needed an idea. Until the 6th of October 2014, I didn't have a clue about my business plan and setting up my mini company until one day I came home, turned the TV on, and sat down in my sofa like most kids, and I saw a documentary about Charles, a 9-year-old kid who took the bus to go to school every day like others, but that day he never made it. He just fell asleep, that's all, nothing serious. He fell asleep in his bus. But no teacher noted that, because they didn't call out the pupils' names in class. So the journalist spoke of Charles' parents and said, "Put yourself in their shoes." I think it had to be simpler if things were to be calm. So you imagine you go to school at 4:30 to get your child and he's not there. You wait for 10, 15, 20 minutes and still not there. And you start to get stressed, wondering what's happening. You go to see the teacher who said, I never saw Charles all day long. You start to wonder. And you said, who's responsible? What happened to my child? And who is responsible for his disappearance for 8 hours? Is it because of the teachers who didn't call out their names, or because of the bus driver who took his bus to the terminal and didn't realize there was still a child in the bus? The story didn't tell us what happened, but what I took away from this is that there was some problem in education today. Teachers, of course, they have tools. They're not always good, and they're not digital above all. So I went to my class in economics and I said, I'll take Charles as an example and say, yes, let's create a digital application that teachers can use to call names out in the mornings quite modestly. And that's how it all started. And I developed my project, a mini fictitious company, up to May 2015, when I took part in a contest for young entrepreneurs under 15 after receiving a spam in my email. And it was lucky, in fact, because it was a call by School, a French company, a call for projects in education. And that was for young entrepreneurs who had good ideas. So I decided to vie in that contest online, and 3 weeks later I was the public's preference. And I had to pitch my project in a Parisian theater before 200 people and journalists. I'm very shy. It doesn't look it today, but on my last school report, they said that I was terribly shy. So speaking before hundreds of people in a theater is quite impressive. Plus, it was the first time I presented this important project to me before journalists and a group of experts. I won the contest to my great surprise. I'm doing my driver's license right now, but haven't won that one yet. And that took me all the way up to meeting the head of Apple Europe 2 months later. He said, Philippine, I've heard about your plan. We think it's great. Would you like to tell us more about it in London tomorrow? So, of course, I could only accept. And he said, Philippine, how can we help you? I said, listen, that's great. I'm very happy. I'm touched. I have different skills, but I don't have all the required skills. And I see that you're interested in my startup, which is still fictitious. It was just an idea. We didn't even have visuals. So I said to him, could you send me a list of companies, of IT developers we could work with in Paris to develop the application? They gave me a list of 500 companies. I didn't want to click on all of them. I'm lazy. So I chose at random, the one with the nicest name. And it's been 4 years now that we have been working together. And then we're now in November, December 2015 at Christmas dinner. We're talking with my cousins about my contests and my plans. And my cousin said, Philippine, have you spoken about your plan to journalists? And I said, no. And then they said, okay, take the computer and let's write to a journalist, the 25th of December. We chose a French channel called BFM Business. There were 200 journalists. We chose one at random, just like for the development company. I wrote saying they have a small project. I'd like to tell you more about it. If you're interested, contact me. And they called me a week later to say that we'll put you on on an interview a week later on the 7th of January, 2017, over 1 million people viewed it in less than 24 hours. It was a record for BFM Business. Very nice, thanks. And the interview was a kickoff for me in the media, enabling me to make my project known by a vaster audience and also to create the first drafts of my application, now New School. There are two different features. You'll see that on the next slide. Of course, the main idea is, calling people's names in class digitally, but we're also working on positive education, meaning good digital points. Maybe when you were kids, you had good points, and after 10 good points, you got the picture. But that's what we're doing, but digitally. The teachers can give good points to their pupils directly using their phone. This adventure is amazing, and you have seen that there are many ups and downs, and the last major shift was when I took part in G20 as an entrepreneur on the margin of the G20 of heads of states. And you have the G22 of companies, and I was very fortunate to represent my country, France, at the G20 2016 in China, in Beijing and Shanghai. I was the youngest, like here, and that's not too bad, is it? But that allowed me to talk about my project and to get it better known at international level and to obtain that recognition that I wasn't really looking for. But that's always most welcome. New School is also meeting a lot of people. Fabulous encounters that are sometimes unexpected. One of the most beautiful encounters was with Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, who came and gave me a wonderful surprise one day in Paris and told me, well, his teams told me that maybe I would have a meeting with the Apple team in an Apple store in Paris. And I sat down, and he touched me on the back. It was Tim Cook. I was really flabbergasted because, after all, he was God himself. There were other people like Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, and others. But the most enriching encounters are what you find around a conference or an event. And I believe that the ones that are the most impactful are the ones that you have in schools with teachers, pupils you meet, who will say that their problem is this and that, and how our new school solution can be a solution and improve their quality of life. My job as an entrepreneur, I'm often told that an entrepreneur's job is to inspire. I don't think so. This may be my own personal view, but to call attention to entrepreneurs, the role of entrepreneurs, teachers, heads of establishments, headmasters, and pupils about the education of the future. That's what's important, because these are the people who are making that major stride forward towards a digital revolution in education, using powerful tools that are more and more digital and efficient, and because they see things differently. Thank you.
I will be speaking today about how women are a source of economic advantage. I'm going to show and demonstrate my research that I've conducted at my school.
اتاحت الفرصة إن أحد يطلع على مسرح في محفل زي كذا، يعني بالعكس جدا حلوة وكويسة، ومنها تعزز العلاقة والشراكة، إنه في شباب كانوا يتكلموا عن تكنولوجيا وأشياء لنا علاقة فيها، فممكن يصير في تعاون لاحقا أو ما بعد، فبالعكس هي فرصة جدا ممتازة.
صراحة كانت تجربة رائعة، وكنت جدا سعيدة إني أتكلم اليوم عن بحثي وعن تشجيع البحوث في السعودية. والجمهور كان رائع والحضور كان رائع، يعني طاقة إيجابية في المكان، وتحس كان شعور جدا جميل إنك تشوف طلبة آخرين مبتعثين في أمريكا أو جايين من أماكن ثانية، والإنجازات اللي قاعدين يسوونها.
الشغل اللي سوته مسك جبار جدا، هذا يسمى الببليك بوليسي، خدم المملكة العربية السعودية وخدمنا احنا كسعوديين، فعلا عكسنا صورة جميلة جدا عن المملكة.
Alors hélas, on arrive sur notre fin et notre...
Well, it's now time to listen to our final speaker, another incredible person who is revolutionizing the universal language. What is the universal language? No, not music. Let's say the new universal language. The little heart. Or code. No, it's going to be code. He's going to teach us to code, not in 1 year, not in 6 months, but in 9 weeks. What? Oh, 2 months. Okay, well, 9 weeks more or less then. So, big round of applause for him. Boris Payard. Hi, my name is Boris Payard. I'm CEO and co-founder of Le Wagon, a strange name. What is it? It's a coding school. 2 months full-time where you teach people to develop their own web products. We're rather proud because we've been elected best coding school running in 2 years running. We started it up with my brother and another partner with we're fully self-funded, and now we are ahead of tech giants who created school for billions of euros. Maybe I'm going to manage to use this remote thingy. In fact, I have a pretty classic career. I went to Centrale Paris, an engineering school. I didn't really have a calling. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was good at maths. A little bit like everyone in 2008, I ended up in a trading room for HSBC, and I created mathematical models for the financial market. It wasn't really a calling. I ended up there. I kind of just followed the path. It's like in the movies, Boris, you need to stand on the little cross. And the interesting thing is that when I went to engineering school, I think probably the course that I hated most and that I couldn't get my mind around was coding, programming. I always tried to skip it as much as I could. I couldn't see the purpose. It was hugely boring. And the educational experience, I don't know if you have studied coding, but in terms of a pedagogical means, it's basically you sit for 3 hours in a lecture hall and you look at slides. Code is probably the easiest thing in the world to illustrate. You can execute a small script, you can put things up on the screen, you can have fun. But when you're in engineering school, you just sit in a lecture hall for 3 hours and shown some PowerPoint slides, and then you go to practical class and you've kind of forgotten what you're supposed to do. You learn how to translate digits into Roman numerals. So it's rather bad from an educational point of view. And it's kind of weird because I hated it. And then 8 years later, I ended up starting my own school of coding, which is considered the best in the world. So I must be a bit of a masochist, but at one point I thought maybe that'll be interesting. And the calling came to me not at school. It came to me much later when I was working for HSBC in the trading room. It was a little bit tedious, so I started working on projects at night and at the weekend, and I was fortunate enough to have friends, close friends, who were developers. Now, one of them works for Airbnb, one for Instacart, and one for Uber. They all migrated to the other side of the Atlantic. We were in Paris at the time, and we used to get together at the weekend and code little apps. I worked on a calendar that could bring together Facebook and Google events, little apps like that. And that's when I had a very basic revelation. I discovered that, in fact, code can be used to build products that are going to address consumer needs. It's not Sudoku or crossword puzzles. It has a purpose. You can build software with it to solve problems. And that completely transformed my opinion of code. It's probably the most fascinating thing that you can learn to do. When you're building a product, there are multiple skills involved. It's not just a geek's thing or an engineer's thing. When you're building a piece of software, you need to wonder what problem you're trying to resolve and what the best software solution would be. You need to have what is known as product thinking. You don't just go direct to code. You try to think of solutions for a given problem. And then, of course, there is an engineering aspect. When you're coding, things need to work properly, the code needs to be clean and maintainable, the database needs to be properly architectured. It requires a lot of engineering skills. I mean, we're all in agreement. You also need to work on ergonomics, UI and UX design, because if you create a product that's used by people, it needs to be intuitive. They need to understand the navigation, the buttons, and so on. It needs to be user-friendly. So you need to be good at ergonomics. And it needs to be pretty. Sometimes if you're doing B2B corporate products, they don't really care. But most of the applications that everyday people use, they need to be pretty. They're like design standards today that are very high. You can't afford to do something that looks horrible. So ultimately, coding is not just translating digits into Roman numerals after 3 hours of a tedious lecture. It's probably the most fascinating thing I've ever done in my life, because when I worked in banks, all I did was probability models to create models for shares. And then when I started coding products, I became a product designer. I became an editor when I had to write text to pitch my product. I think it was a nice connection between lots of different skills. And I thought, why don't I teach code? So that's what I started doing. And that was 4 years ago. That was the trigger for me. So my calendar app was kind of crap, so we didn't continue. So we set up Le Wagon, intensive 2-month course in coding. Sometimes it can take 3 years. You can drill down very low, almost to the electronics of your computer, and then add a number of bricks. What we do at Le Wagon is that we teach people to code their product in 2 months, and we give them the important tips. And then they can drill down, if they want to drill down deeper, into more precise aspects of programming. So, in fact, with that promise, we have a lot of people who come to see us. We have a lot of entrepreneurs who come along and say, okay, I've got this idea, and if I want to go to the next step and test it on real users, either I'm going to pay a freelancer to develop an initial version, and then I'll be stuck. If my hypotheses are wrong and no one likes my product, I'll need to trash it or repay another freelancer. So it makes the process very slow and cumbersome. You spend a lot of time and money. So there are many entrepreneurs who come to Le Wagon and say, okay, 2 months of my life, it's not that much. I'm going to learn to code myself, my first prototypes, and then I can go out there and test my market. If I fail, I fail, but at least I'll fail quickly. And it won't have cost me any money. I might not become my company's CTO, but it's going to allow me to use a real prototype rather than just a PowerPoint slideshow. And if things work, great. I'll find funding, and then I'll find a developer who'll be much more keen to work with me. And it'll show that not only do I know tech, but also I will have found my traction. And that's better than all of these guys from business schools who go to networking events to meet developers. So we have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people who want to be developers in startups, or product managers, new professions. And entrepreneurship attracts people, of course, a lot, but something seems to be happening in the world of freelancers. A lot of people want to be freelancing. A lot of business school students no longer want to work for big companies. They just want to freelance on various assignments. And that seems to be something that's very significant for young people. Work on projects you like, freelancing from wherever you like. So just to tell you where we stand, so it's been going for 4 years. Again, we were voted best school in the world for the 2nd year running. These are just the Paris-based startups, our alumni. We have more than 150 startups that are still active, founded by alumni. It's funded 300,000 to 3 million euros. We don't bring the funding, we help to accelerate it. So we have 3,000 alumni now for a 4-year-old school. That's pretty good. And we're going to be training 2,000 students worldwide, and we've opened up in 28 cities without any outside funding. So we're in North America, in Montreal. There are a few points missing here in Asia, and a lot in Europe. And we're currently planning to open a campus in Riyadh in late 2018. So I'm very happy to be here because I can feel entrepreneurial vibes in this room. I can feel something's happening. The best for me will be to discuss things with entrepreneurs in Riyadh and help them to be more creative and create the startups of tomorrow. Thanks for your attention. Thank you very much, Boris. But I shouldn't be thanking you because you didn't stand on the cross. I know. It has to be done. I think Boris and the other 8 other speakers deserve your applause. Speakers in this Misk Talk, which they had a world tour. They went to Egypt, the US, the UK, and they're finishing off in Paris. So from the bottom of my heart, sometimes I'm here to talk about my own life change, but I think they deserve a lot of applause because they came to share their experience, sometimes very personal things that touch their families. There's disease. So I think really they deserve a lot of applause because it wasn't easy for them to come here, open their heart and share their vision. I'm very happy I wasn't chosen by chance to come and moderate this Misk Talk. It was hugely inspiring. I think we can also give a big round of applause for the organizers. I call them change makers. It's been, I've dedicated my whole time, even the weekends and holidays, interviewing people such as these 9 fantastic people. Oh, I need to stand on the cross too, don't I? They're trying to change the world, find solutions, and it echoes a personal story that I have very briefly. About 4 years ago, I was in the refugee camp of the Rohingya, and the heart symbol allowed me to identify that I had a heart malformation. And after this humanitarian experience with these Muslims who have no homeland since 1982, more than 1 million Rohingyas who live in refugee camps, and what they found was that I had a heart disease. So I got an operation, and I make little hearts with my hands like this to feel good, because it makes you feel good to see people who listen to their heart and who are committed. And it often echoes their personal story. They want to develop and give their country power. We saw these young Saudis and young French people. I think that's awesome. I think it's great to meet inspiring people who want to share their passion and who want to find solutions. They all have a long-term vision. They're all passionate. They're all audacious. They all want to change the world, and it comes from deep within. So I would like to give you a big round of applause because there are journalists such as me with a passion for people like you, and we need people like you. Please continue. And it's great that there should be a development in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. And I hope I can come and visit your country one of these days. So well done, and thank you so much. Oh, that was my book, by the way.